What would you do if someone knocked on your door and you opened it only to find yourself staring at your own face? Someone who looks exactly like you. Same face, same voice, same smile. But you have never seen her before in your life. This is more than just a story. This is a revelation buried for 30 years. Alice, a former teacher, had recently decided to restart her career after years of being a full-time mom to their 2 kids, Precious and Daniel. Her husband Henry was a calm, successful business consultant who worked mostly from home. With the kids now in primary school and Alice needing time for her training, the couple agreed it was time to get a maid. So, Henry contacted a top-rated maid agency. He requested someone experienced, respectful, and trustworthy. No special preference. No background check beyond what the agency already did. It was supposed to be a simple arrangement. 2 days later, the maid arrived. Henry opened the door and froze. Behind the door stood a young woman with soft eyes, a gentle smile, and Alice's face. He blinked twice, thinking it was a prank. But no. The woman standing before him wasn't his wife in a uniform. It was someone else entirely, yet looked just like her. Alice, hearing the doorbell, came downstairs and stopped mid-step. Her heart pounded. She gripped the railing like she was about to faint. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. The kids, curious, ran out and screamed, "Mummy!" Daniel whispered, holding Precious tightly. "Why are there 2 of you?" The maid turned pale, her eyes scanning everyone like a trapped animal. She stepped back from the doorway, her lips trembling. I think there's a mistake," she said quietly, almost in a whisper. Her voice cracked. "I'm here for the maid job, but..." Alice couldn't take her eyes off her. It was like looking into a living mirror. Same skin tone, same dimpled smile, same exact scar on the chin. Something only Alice, her mirror, and her husband knew about. Henry tried to keep calm. He invited the woman in, not because he wasn't terrified, but because something about her expression was more scared than theirs. Her name was Grace. That's what the agency had told her to go by. She was 29, according to her file. Raised in Warri by an elderly widow. She had no family that she knew of. No parents. No siblings. She had worked in different homes before, but nothing like this had ever happened to her. She was just as confused as they were. Henry immediately called the agency. They insisted Grace was who she claimed to be. No known relation to any of their clients. Her documents had passed verification. She had no twin on record. No known family members. Alice couldn't sleep that night. Neither could Henry. How was it possible that someone looked so perfectly like her? Every tiny detail. That week, Alice couldn't go back to training. She couldn't even let Grace near the kids at first. Not out of hatred, but fear. Was this a setup? A scam? A secret family Henry never told her about? Or something spiritual? Alice began digging through her past. She called Mama Alice, her aging mother in Benin, and asked questions she never thought she'd ask. But Mama brushed it off with laughter. "Aha! You and your movie ideas. Go and sleep, my daughter. Maybe the girl just resemble you small." But Alice knew what she saw. Grace didn't just resemble her. She was her. Same face, same frame, same everything. One morning, while looking through her childhood photos, Alice found an old, fading hospital tag. Something she never paid attention to. It was a photo of her as a newborn. But something was off. The handwriting on the tag said, Baby A. Not just Alice. She had always been told she was born alone. But that tag, it felt like a clue. Like a crack in the story she'd always believed. And then, Grace found something too. A birthmark. The same strange crescent-shaped birthmark Alice had. Grace had it too, on the same side of her back. The house went silent when she showed Alice. Not a word. Just a long, stunned silence. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And it had started 30 years ago. In a hospital Alice had never been told the full truth about. The house had never been this quiet. Even the children, once fascinated by the mysterious maid who looks like Mummy, had begun to feel the weight of the tension. Alice sat alone in her room, staring at an old photo frame in her hand. It held a picture of her as a toddler with her mother, Mama Alice. But now, after everything, even the image seemed suspicious, like it was hiding something right in plain sight. Grace was no longer just a maid. She had stopped working entirely. She didn't cook, clean, or do laundry. No one asked her to. Everyone in the house was still too shaken, too curious, too haunted by the possibility that their lives had been built on a lie. But it was Alice who took the first step. She booked a ticket and traveled back to her hometown, where Mama Alice lived alone in a quiet compound surrounded by memories too old to be trusted. Mama was surprised to see her. She welcomed her daughter with open arms, but Alice could barely hug her back. She didn't come for soup. She didn't come for a visit. She came for answers. And this time, she wasn't leaving without them. Mama, I need to know the truth, Alice said firmly. I met someone who looks exactly like me. Same scar, same birthmark. She's not my twin, is she? Mama Alice laughed again, just like before, but this time it sounded forced. Hollow. Young people and their social media walla, she replied. Maybe not filter she use. Alice slammed the hospital tag on the table. This says, Baby A. Were there two babies, Mama? The silence that followed was not ordinary. It was the silence that comes before a storm. Mama Alice looked away. Then slowly, her shoulders dropped. Her mouth quivered, and her eyes filled with something Alice had never seen in her. Shame. And finally, Mama spoke. You were two. You had a sister. Identical. She was Baby B. Alice's legs went numb. She collapsed onto the chair, unable to breathe. Her hands trembled. She was so small, both of you were. And your father. He died just after your birth. I had no money, no job, no help. I was bleeding and weak. The hospital said I owed too much. They threatened to keep both of you. Her voice cracked as she wiped her tears. A nurse. She came to me. She said one woman had been praying for a baby. She offered to clear my bill and give me something extra if I gave her one of the babies. I said no at first, but I was desperate, Alice. I was broken. I had no choice. You sold my sister? Alice whispered. I thought I would die if I didn't. And I told myself you both would live different, better lives. I told myself I did what a mother had to do. Tears streamed down Alice's face. Anger and sadness mixed inside her like a raging storm. She didn't know whether to scream or cry or run. Mama, her name is Grace, she finally whispered. She's been living in worry. With a widow. She works as a maid. She came to our house. She saw my face, and she panicked. Mama Alice covered her mouth and wept. Alice left her hometown the next morning with only one thing on her mind. Grace needed to know. Back home, she walked into the house quietly. Grace was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, staring at her hands. Alice sat opposite her. I went to see Mama, she said. She told me everything. Grace looked up slowly, her eyes wide, searching. You're my sister, Alice continued. My twin. We were separated when we were just hours old. Grace didn't respond. She just sat there, frozen, as a tear slipped down her cheek. "I've spent my life not knowing you existed," Alice whispered. "But now I do. And I'm not letting you go again." And then, for the first time since she arrived, Grace smiled. A broken, overwhelmed, confused smile. But it was real. Two strangers. Two copies. Now, two sisters. They hugged. Tentatively at first, then tightly. Henry walked in, saw them, and quietly stepped out again, his heart full. The mystery was far from over. But a lost piece of the puzzle had finally been found. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a terrifying discovery had grown into something none of them could explain. A deep, unspoken bond between Alice and Grace. Though the truth of their shared face shook them, it didn't divide the home. It did the opposite. Henry, who was once stunned and confused, found himself drawn into the warmth of something bigger than coincidence. He noticed how the kids laughed louder when Grace was around. How Alice smiled softer when Grace told stories of her past. How the house, once filled with routine and repetition, now buzzed with laughter, healing, and joy. There were no tests. No papers. No proof. Just hearts connecting. Mama Alice came over one Sunday afternoon. For the first time in years, she asked Alice to sit beside her on the balcony, away from the noise of the children playing inside. With trembling hands and teary eyes, she whispered, "Alice, I owe you more than I've ever said. But today, it's Grace I want to talk about." Alice stayed silent, her heart beating fast. Mama Alice took a deep breath and said, "When I had you, you weren't alone. There were two of you. I couldn't afford the hospital bills. I was weak, scared, and desperate. A woman offered help. I gave one baby away. I was told she'd grow up abroad with a wealthy family. I thought I'd never see her again." Alice didn't speak. She didn't need to. Everything now made sense. Without hesitation, she reached for Mama Alice's hands and said, "You don't have to say more. She's home now." That evening, something shifted. Alice and Grace cooked dinner together. Henry set the table with the children. Mama Alice stayed back and watched, her eyes fixed on the two identical women laughing and stirring soup like they had done it forever. After dinner, Grace stood up. With her voice steady, she said, "I never had a real family. I never knew where I came from. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong." Tears welled up in Henry's eyes. The children clapped. Alice hugged her sister tightly. And then, just when everyone thought the night couldn't get more beautiful, the doorbell rang. A courier stood outside with a parcel. Henry signed and opened it. Inside was an envelope and a small golden plaque. The agency Grace once worked for had been investigated for identity fraud. In the process, Grace's name popped up in a forgotten inheritance file. A wealthy woman who had been Grace's former employer had passed away and left her a house and a small trust fund, something Grace never knew. It was a miracle. A woman who came to serve was now being served by Grace itself. They all cried that night, not because of pain, but because of the beauty of life, when broken pieces come back together. Grace chose to keep living with Alice and Henry, even though she now had her own house. "This is my home now," she said. "I want to raise your children like they're mine too." In the months that followed, the bond only grew deeper. The two women did everything together, raised the children, ran a small baking business from home, and spoke in churches about forgiveness, identity, and the strange, beautiful ways life can bring people back together. What began as fear turned into a blessing. What started as a mystery became a miracle. And what looked like a coincidence was destiny, perfectly timed. Sometimes life pulls you apart only to bring you back together stronger. The things hidden for decades will always find light when the time is right. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional, mysterious, and inspiring stories. Until next time.